All right, hi. Let's gather around, folks. Get this reading on the road. Thank you so much for coming to Malvern Books on this wonderfully warm Texas summer day. I am so proud and happy to have Marcela, Sulak, and Jenny Browne here. And it's just going to be loads of fun. And they have decided to kind of do a tag team thing, which is always a good time. And, so Jenny lives in San Antonio. She studied at the University of Texas. Published a lot of books, a lot of good poetry. We've got a lot of them. You can buy them. She'll sign them. Marcela's studied at the University of Texas. She's currently living in Israel, and she's done the same. She has a couple of books of one book of translation back there and a book of poetry, and it's just really exciting. And then there's the Wing Beats, which I think one of them is in one and one of them is in the other, so you got to buy both. And it's just great. So we're really, really glad to have them. Thank you so much for coming out, Marcela and Jenny. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I'm thrilled to be here. This is sort of Marcela's pilgrimage, annual pilgrimage to Texas, which has kind of turned into a time to see her and a time to get to read together. We did it about this time last year. I don't know if you know that live Joni Mitchell album where she complains about being asked to always play the same songs, and she does that, no one ever tells Van Gogh to play A Starry Night again, man, but if you're a poet and someone actually knows one of your poems and quotes a line from it, it's like the most thrilling thing in the world. And so I actually had a poem request before I got up here, and so I thought I'd begin. It's the first poem in this book, Dear Stranger. I'll tell you a little bit more about it later, but I'm going to start at the very beginning, as they say in The Sound of Music. I'm all full of quotes tonight. The multiple states of matter. If four legs make a desk, a relationship, a donkey, and its hee-haw switch-backing our slow descent, which way to turn first? If 4 in the morning and distant lands cloud the green tea, shall we begin with the sound of one blue parakeet, loyal to sky, inside its dented cage, and not the slow laugh of the red-haired friend who watched with me, drinking instant coffee outside Alamosa. I could leave now and reach her before next darkness, but I hear the hole cut into her skull like a busted taillight, the sharp turns of her face walled off from any new memory. I could become the steady hands of the man who tossed a blanket over the bird, conceal light, and call it night. I could have throttled the Buddhist earlier, halfway through dinner, when he said, the real problem is you still think you get to decide what kind of death is a good one. He's right. That's precisely what I think. The back of the donkey I rode down into the canyon quaked beneath me for miles. Every time we stopped, she faced the rock. She didn't want to see where we were going either. This desk faces a wall of wooden masks, gods and monsters, some with other bodies coming out their foreheads. The being growing inside my friend's brain is both solid and liquid, what science class once explained to be the multiple states of matter. They didn't tell us that the real sound a heart makes is not a drum, but a stubborn lub-dub, swollen and dumb in the throat. The donkey I ride isn't going anywhere. If the only difference between gods and monsters exists in which brain they find belief, why not turn toward another story that shouldn't be true, a pickup backing over the head of a dog named Eggroll, and how the wet earth beneath gulped to make room for his brain to rest until the blind giant's joyride was over, and the children cheered, and the mom wiped her eyes on the back of her hand, and Eggroll stood and shook is what keeps happening and happening next. But 500 miles away, in another state of matter, the one who sits beside my friend's bed must remind her how to swallow. Every few minutes he asks, "Do you need to swallow?" And if she blinks, he says, "Okay, swallow then." I was just talking to someone who's a scientist, about the precision of scientists, and I teach at Trinity, which is a liberal arts college, and one of my favorite former students is here. Having those science students in your English classes is great because someone talks about a heart beating and they're like, "Excuse me, the heart doesn't actually beat, it goes lump-dum." So that's a fact. I did. I just got a nice note that a poem from this book is going to be on Poetry Daily on Saturday. So, you can, I guess, say you heard it here first and feel, yeah. And it seemed like a good summer poem to read. To have considered the last of the summer mackerel, arriving with raw insides knifed from spine and rearranged, bite-sized, between the fish's own head and tail, all balanced on a cloud of shaved daikon, as symbolic of the presentation of self, implies an inner life similarly displayed for strangers and lovers alike to choose the tender parts, touching them to a puddle of soy sauce, followed by the fibrous clumps of ginger and slivered scallion. But to have considered this particular mackerel as like us, and thus hopeless, forgets how lucky it can feel to have already grown desperate and driven fast from the new therapist's office, parking on hot, soft asphalt, walking through hot, soft wind into the Tokyo Inn, and there been greeted by the stunned guns of air conditioning, and led to a low table and back, and listen. That young couple at the next table have just returned from their honeymoon and are eating tempura with the girl's pale, sweet parents. The whole family will visit the planetarium after this, quietly staring up at a preview of tomorrow's sky. A lump in the mother's left breast mushrooming in the dark, the father's freckled skin ticking toward metastases. And that girl, when asked, can't answer what the best part of her trip was. Not that her slender neck doesn't redden with it, but because she hasn't yet discovered how the best parts eventually point across the table at the worst, as the hook lip of the Big Dipper points toward the North Star, one saying, "You always," the other, "You never." Nights like these, when stars all start to look the same, mackerel gray and slow flickering, as an index finger hovers above the violently spun globe, pressing down on this particular place, as one presses the fish's flesh, quiet and wondering just how long since we've seen the ocean. forget, you see a movie at the end, they say, no animals were harmed in the making of this. And I sometimes want to say, a lot of people died in the making, during the making. I'd like to read something a little better. Maybe I'll save that for the second half. So I'm going to read about 10 minutes. I'll read just a couple more poems, and Marcela will come up, and then I'll come back up and read a few more. So I'm going to read you something new. I was recently asked to, it's a poem in 6 parts. I'm just going to read you 2 of them. I was recently asked to respond to this big Matisse exhibit that's going on at the Samsung Museum of Art. And I love Matisse, and I went and spent some time with it. But the playoffs were also on. So every time I sat down, San Antonio, and I just kept thinking about watching the game, and so I was a little distracted. So I had this goal for myself to somehow write a poem that responded to Matisse that included the Spurs. And so, anyway, we're going to perform these in August down there. There were 4 poets who were asked to respond. So this first part is called Spectators. Sitting next to the bearded train conductor and his chicken fried steak at the long hotel bar in Van Horn, I look away from the NBA finals and think a little of Matisse. A beast, the conductor shouts and pounds the chest of his engineer pal who can't quite finish that 3rd shrimp cocktail. They're talking about Serge Ibaka, who just keeps blocking every shot the Spurs take. When Duncan finally gets fouled, the crowd waves white foam sticks that from this distance look like determined sperm. All day I drove my new blue diesel and listened to the radio discuss a boy who shot women who didn't love him exactly the way he wanted. Well, my husband said, shutting the trunk, if you're really gonna leave me, you can at least get good gas mileage. Nothing ever loves us exactly the way we want. Not Southern California, and not Serge Ibaka, or even his father named Desire Ibaka. The painter Delacroix thought you should be able to draw a body falling before it hits the ground. Matisse shook his head, insisting imagination remain in motion. The engineer leans closer to show me pictures of his grandkids, dressed up like Maverick and Goose from Top Gun. I always love the part when the tragic blonde watches her man bang on the piano, then yells, "Take me to bed or lose me forever." Some of the men I watch have been bought for their athleticism. Some have season tickets and will now buy me another domestic beer. One decorated the women on the couch in exotic textiles. One texts again to ask if it's really too late to turn around. And I'm gonna just read one more in this section and then get Marcela here. This is a quote by Matisse. He said once, "No one who creates is blameless." So I was sort of carrying it around. I was out in New Mexico and Colorado and was spending some time with people who were trying to interpret petroglyphs. So they sort of made their way into this. No one who creates is blameless. Putting horns on people suggests strength or weakness depending on which way they curve. 2 circles mean you may have to look harder. Creator, I could say I was minding my own regrets, watching ants bury all their dead together. I could say it was an honor to have been your cloud, to have your knuckles bruise my backbone, your watery voice drop like handfuls of clean dimes. 2 lines carved on the boulder could mean empty or lost, but I'm still writing this for whoever made the blurry butterfly tattoo launched across the lower back of that woman with unlit cigarette and glowing Bluetooth, who squats low to chisel off more chunks of ancient crystal wall. She did not, like the yoga teacher back in town, ask if we were okay with all this sunshine. Don't explain the season we planted fruit trees and felt only cold rain. Don't explain. It was an honor to have been your goat, small-brained and hungry, your wind advertising all it touches. Thanks.